Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And this is Ben
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Boom. It's we're doing Loki. Is
Yep.
the episode named Glorious Purpose?
It is. I believe
Excellent.
it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's episode 1, Glorious
I'm just
Purpose.
used to first episodes being called pilot,
Yeah.
but this is obviously straight to full season order. Yeah, Loki with glorious purpose.
Mm-hmm. Well, it starts the way the first trailer does, with that Endgame scene, just so that you kind of get it.
Mhm.
We won't get too much into that. You've seen Endgame, hopefully, if you're listening to this episode, and then the Gobi Desert scene, which, so to get right to it, he tries to get away. He lands in the Gobi Desert, and right away, Hunter B-15 shows up with her team and takes him in. I really liked the experience where she hits him and she's like, you're moving at a 16th of the speed, but you are feeling all of this pain like in real time.
Yeah.
That's effective.
It's very effective. I that just gave me callbacks to like how Loki's been tortured with time in the past, where it's like, I've been falling
like
for
Dr.
30
Strange,
minutes. It's like this guy really gets messed around with time a lot. And that was a lot of fun to me because I was like, yep. Aside from the
and so
effect.
basically her dialogue introduces that when an alternate timeline starts growing, there's kind of like that red line that they visually show you.
Yeah.
That if it hits that, that's going to be the Nexus event, and they can't have that, so they reset every time. They'll show up where there's an aberration, and I believe the reset is literally like they'll just kill everything. Like it's not just like, oh, we're rewinding.
Yeah.
It looks like they just disintegrate.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if it's so, because obviously some of the other content creators like have discussed what that stick is. Is it like a different version of like the canon that they have, the retcon canon that they have that they shoot? Because and then how does it work? Does it actually like disintegrate everything, or does it actually put them back into the timeline? Because you would think that time variance authority would be like, okay, if you deviated from your timeline, the goal is to put them back original, right? Not to kill them immediately, because if it kills them immediately, that would screw up with time.
My assumption is what, like, basically, hey, well, we saw with the other guy there who didn't take his ticket. I guess he died because he didn't take his ticket, but it looks like they're like, hey, how do you plead? And I think we'll get into it, but I think you do get killed. You get taken out of that timeline gets blown up. But I'm pretty sure you just die.
Because here's going to be the most complicated thing about talking about Loki is while they're in the TVA offices, do they even exist in time?
No.
Or is it like some weird like Monsters Inc. universe where it's like each door is like, and this is a centralized universe that they can access each universe through different portals and like that kind of stuff. Like that's the first thing that ran through my mind when he saw the thing.
I believe that's what you said.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So basically,
it exists independent of time then?
Yes.
Or okay.
Well, that's again, I think they had that in the trailer when they're in the elevator and he's like, how long have you been here? He's like, nah, it's hard to tell. Time doesn't really move like that.
Time works differently here, but I feel like that's the only explanation that we're going to get about what actually happens with the TVA, at least for now. And that's going to be like,
to me, what you said seems like is supported by what we saw in the show, independent of what was said. Like, I think it's clear to me, as you said, that they're outside of time and they're just using these portals to go back into the time streams. That seemed like that's what it was to me.
Fair enough.
But here, I think this is where I don't think this is where we're going to say stuff no one else has said, but I feel like for us, like obviously with Captain America and Winter Soldier, which is what the show ended up being called. I believe we kind of took like a more race
We went-
theory, but we were looking at it as what it's like to be black, what it's like to be white, and really looking at the race of the characters. For me, I think this show, basically starting with this where we are in the episode, which is Loki actually at the TVA, is really going to be dealing with free will to a degree. But I think it's really what I liked about this show was basically we get to a point where Loki is going to have to give up on his idea of himself. Like what he has built up in his head gets stripped away throughout this episode. Like initially it's the physical stuff. So they take the Tesseract away from him, which he put a lot of stock in that. They take away his fine Asgardian leather, which obviously means that's his armor, so to speak. So he's literally naked, but it's like now he just has the emotional, mental stuff. But I like that there's they phase it. So that first phase is just taking away the visual stuff that makes him feel powerful, or and I really like that. And they are starting to hint at, like, you know, you aren't in control of anything. Like your whole thing is that you're born to rule, but like we laugh, like we don't even laugh at it. It's just not a concern to us. You're nothing.
It's kind of funny because it's like I like how Owen Wilson is picking at him in those scenes where they're like,
I mean, before he gets to Owen Wilson, because we will get there, but it's literally like there's a lot of visual stuff happening, like as I said, but he keeps dropping in levels. Like he every time something gets taken away from him, he's dropping down, and it's just like, like you have no status here. And and like obviously at the end of the episode we know that he talks about how he's aware of his low status and everything. But it's for the audience, maybe if they didn't catch on to that from the other movies, you're seeing like how he is being disabused of that notion that he has all this power and he's ready to rule. And I really like that, because there is that point of like, how much are you actually in control of in your life, but tied directly to like Loki as a character and the status he thinks he has, and how they're going to take that away from him throughout everything that he thinks is important. Well, by the end of this episode, you think it's going to be by the end of the scene, but by the end of the episode, you're just like, everything he thought was important doesn't even matter to these people.
And it's such a great kind of visualization. And I think I want to save my point until we get to actually the Owen Wilson scene, because there's so much in there that I wanted to unpack with you. But I know, let's go through this chronologically, obviously,
because this is the bit. I mean, I'm not going to have a lot to say about it, but this is after all that gets stripped away and he's taking the ticket and he says, well, I don't even belong here. We get the Miss Minutes cartoon. I mean, I feel like everyone has, other than us, all the other content creators have broken this down. For me, it was just the broad strokes of, there used to be a bunch of different timelines. They were at war with each other. It was called the Multiversal War. And the three timekeepers came together and merged everything into one timeline called the Sacred Timeline. So that's going to be important for the show moving forward, is what is going to negatively affect the Sacred Timeline. Anything that negatively affects the Sacred Timeline is what's going to be addressed and recanonized, or whatever they call it with those sticks. So that, I think that for me was the important thing, but it's also something that I feel like they keep hinting at, which is the TVA is obviously the villain of this show. Like it is not this objective force in the world that's just like, no, we're just trying to keep it. It clearly has an agenda. Like
it has an agenda.
Once you see the thing at the end of like, for all time, always, it's like, it
like
wasn't
throughout
like
the
that
whole
before you forced it to be this way.
And that's the biggest thing, right? I'm glad you pointed it out, because they very much have an in-house propaganda machine. Like that video, the Miss Minutes video that Loki watches, it's ridiculous because he knows he's being lied to. Like he knows it's a trick, and it's a ploy of all these kind of things. Whether or not the story is real, I'm sure the story is real, but there's a different
They've
spin
got a
on
spin
it,
on it. Yeah.
where it's like, oh, we did it, and like calling it the sacred timeline to be like, ooh, it's like delicate. You can't like. There's so many layers of propaganda layered into the TVA, and even like the subtle like background posters that you'll see and all this kind of stuff definitely layers down that propaganda even more. And this Miss Minutes video is like such a good like representation of that era of those kind of educational school videos during the war.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, I would
40s,
imagine they
50s,
were
and
definitely
60s.
going right after the Jurassic Park, like Mr. DNA video.
Yes.
But like,
Yeah, huge vibes with that. Even with the accent, the little like
The
southerny
Southern,
kind
yeah.
of accent and all that kind of stuff. That's Tara Strong doing the voice
Yes.
of Miss Minutes, right?
who has done Harley Quinn in many things. She's been
Correct.
Batgirl.
Mhm.
She's Canadian. She's like this huge. She's been in basically every cartoon you could ever think of. Like I'm sure you look up her credits and she's got like 300 or something like that.
Yeah,
Like,
she's got 300, and I
Yeah.
think where she's like one of the most. I think she's also Ahsoka Tano. Is she not?
no.
No, she's not. Okay, but yeah, I'm confusing her with someone else. But yeah, she's
Tara Strong is
huge.
amazing. Well, I don't. I always feel bad saying these things. What I would say is her output is prolific and she does a really good job. I
Yeah.
don't know her as a person, so I don't want to be on record as being like she's a great person. I don't know her. I just know her work, and it's very good work.
Yeah, she's got great work. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm looking at some of the posts, a picture of like her along with a lot of the voices that she acts out in, like, Arkham video game series.
Like, and
She's
she
Harley.
loves her character. Like, I remember hearing her in interviews being like, yeah, if someone tells you that like they don't care that someone is voicing a character that they've previously voiced, they're lying to you. Like, people care about
They're
that.
lying.
So,
They're lying.
They care about that.
I can 100% tell you the video game world right now in like Destiny 2 is like really pissed off at Akora Ray, like what character has been like changed for voice acting and all that kind of stuff. But it's like one of the limitations when you have big budget actors be like voice actors for video games, and like you're dealing with kind of scheduling conflicts all the time and you have to kind of do it. But people care about voice actors. They really, really do. Look at Troy McClure and like Phil Hartman in The Simpsons. Like a lot of people definitely said like,
I mean the actual actor. They care about the characters.
Oh yeah, the characters. But
like
the
she's
actors,
saying like, oh, if someone else does Harley Quinn, yeah, I care about that. Like that's
Yeah,
I'm not just
cares.
like, oh, you know, everyone gets a turn. She's like, no, fuck you.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
give me Harley Quinn. I want to be Harley Quinn.
Yeah,
but yeah, we should move on.
Yeah, they're dedicated to it. Sorry about that. I took that to mean something else.
That's okay. Basically, what I wanted to get at is throughout this, again, we'll get to the big reveal, but it's pretty obvious that like Loki understands what's going on because it's every trick he uses. So it's obviously he understands like, oh yeah, you guys are the bad guys too. Like, the only problem is they actually have the power he pretends to have.
Yes.
And so this whole show is him it's not that slow because it all happens within the 50 minutes, but it is like, it's him realizing like, oh fuck, like they can talk shit all they want because they actually have the power. I was just talking shit to make people think I have power, and they actually have it. And I really like that. Like, I feel like his acting is very strong throughout because it's like going through those phases of realization. And so it helps the audience be like, oh, like that's why this is such a big deal, is that like they aren't just like, oh, you know, like we just try to get by. It's like, no, they're very powerful and they're not neutral. I don't think they're neutral at all.
There's no neutrality in this whatsoever.
And I'll save it for when we get to that one most important part. But that is kind of what is being set up here, is that this is a group that can have all the propaganda that Loki comes with, but the problem is they have the power to back it up. Yeah,
they have the power to back it up. They also have the power to scare people into doing what they want too. Like the idea of like, oh, if you deviate a little bit, then it'll immediately cause a multiverse war. I'm like,
it won't immediately. It's just we have to bring you back before it becomes a Nexus event.
Right. In all those things, it's just rather extreme. Yeah. Like that propaganda video was just so well done. I'm like, I hope a lot of people really pick up on how scary that propaganda video is and how immediately like, no, they're villains. You got to watch out for these people. Like there's something going on here. So
I should say you might be right that the video makes it seem like if you do something like just
Yes.
make a left when you should have gone straight, that it causes an accident. But the
Mhm.
show before we see that video already makes it clear that like, no, you've got some time. Like when B-15 shows up, she's kind of like, oh, it's getting to the red line. We need to stop this now. So it's not
Right.
that it, so it, again, just showing that, as you said, their propaganda is saying something that isn't really the case, because as most
Mhm.
propaganda does. But like, you're right that I think the video does make it seem like, hey, you took that left, you fucked everything up. But
Yeah.
in practice, we see that they have a timer. Like it's not something that immediately causes a problem.
Mhm.
They can fix it. I guess they just don't want that out in the
Yeah.
public. So you are right about that. Sorry.
Mhm.
And then, I mean, it gets proven again here in the Mobius section where we get introduced to him. He's in 1540s France. I put 1549, but I'm not committed to that because I don't remember.
Yeah,
But
and I'm not even sure. Here's one thing about this whole show is like every single time that they're gonna have a different era, a different time, I'm gonna immediately like research the hell out of that year. And I was so disappointed when I was like research the hell out of that year in France. I'm like, I didn't really find anything significant, at least that they were referencing or anything like that. It was just like it just seemed like
yeah, I think this, I mean,
a
I'm
weird
sure
connection.
there is a reference that we both of us are missing.
Right.
I'm not big on French history. No, I'm not saying it's stupid. I'm not well versed in it. So I'm sure
Right.
there's, because there was a point of where they ended up at the end in the 1800s. So I'm assuming there's still a point to this. For me, I think in broad strokes, they're just trying to show you that these variants can pop up all over time.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, like it's not a setting in terms of, oh, we just have to go to different places. It's a setting in terms of we need to go to different places and times to capture this stuff. So I think that's what they were trying to set up for casual people. And I guess for this section, we'll just have to be casual. But I'm sure there's stuff that happened in that year or around that time that makes it significant. I just don't have it.
I just find that the choice of imagery in that one scene to be very like that scene comes off weird to me in the sense where it's like this kid is like given this iPad and like this projector and is like, yeah, cool, this is completely normal, everything's okay, it doesn't freak out or anything like that.
My assumption is he or that kid, which the first time I watched I was convinced was a boy, and then the second time I'm pretty sure that's a girl because I think she's wearing a dress. Doesn't matter. The kid, I would imagine the idea is that kid had already seen magic, real magic, through the Loki that visits her.
You know what, that's fair.
So then
that's
by the time you've got Mobius handing you a pad, because I would imagine for her the blue gum, for the kid, I should say the kid, I don't remember the sex. For that kid, the blue gum was probably a big deal, and whatever reappearing would have been a big deal. So I think the idea was Mobius hands her that pad, and it's a very friendly looking character. And I'm with you. I don't quite understand it, but for me, I'm just like, I guess it's just like, we're friendly. You can talk to us.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense.
He even says to the hunters, like, hey, you hold back. And then he tries to ingratiate himself by making fun of the hunters, and they're like, "Fuck you, we can speak French."
Like that,
we understand.
We understand every language in every time. Like, what the hell?
But like,
that was really funny.
Yeah. So I think it's like he was just trying to be like, especially the way it's just a stick figure. It's the least threatening thing possible. I think that's what that was trying to get across.
You know what? Yeah, that's a very good point. It makes a lot of sense to me. Where, you know, if they're trying to get that kid to identify who did the attack or whatever, we'll talk about that in like next. But like, if they're trying to get that, then you're right to assume that he's probably seen some magic or some shit, and like, but seen magic used against him or used against people in this situation. Owen Wilson's like, hey, I have magic too, but I'm going to use it to entertain you and be your friend. That makes much more sense to me. Okay, that makes so much more sense why you didn't freak out. Great point. Great point.
I don't know if Mobius is a good person, but he still works for the bad guys. And again, it's an instance of a character calling out the tactics that they're using, because he, like, when he sees the gum, he's like, oh, I think he says a demon bearing gifts or something like that, and it's like, I mean, that's exactly what you're doing. You're bringing gifts, and your organization isn't a good one. Like, they're not an altruistic organization, I don't think.
Because at this point in time, I wonder if Owen Wilson's character thinks that the TVA is bad, or he's just like, or he is just like, I'm not omnipotent. I've bought into the propaganda or whatever it is. I can't really tell if he
To me, it seems like he's working against them within the system. I don't know how effective that will be, but I do get the sense, like, again, we'll talk about it as he interacts with everybody. He doesn't have a good relationship with basically anyone in the TVA. So that's why I'm saying I don't know if he's good. I just know that he's working for seemingly the bad guys.
Yeah.
And I think that in his head, he's probably like, yeah, I'm changing things from the inside. We'll see what happens.
Maybe.
No one is on. But I mean, I guess the big thing is, and again, we're coming out on the Monday after the episode aired, so I'm sure everyone has already seen this, but yes, the kid points to the devil, and in the trailers it really does seem like, oh, like they might be talking about Mephisto. That was
my immediate response.
Yeah, the director has clearly
shot
stated
that
in no uncertain terms, no, it is Loki. That kid is talking about Loki. We just wanted to connect the horns with his helmet, and I think that's a good thing. I think that they have learned from the last two shows that they
to not allow the speculation, not to fan the fires, at least.
Yeah, like there's no time for cryptic, like, ooh, there's gonna be this.
Ooh, we'll find out.
It's like, no, it's not that. Please let us just tell the story.
Which is why I think is like in my comment and criticism on that, and maybe this is because this is just the first episode. We don't know what the significance of the France attack is. But to me, I'm like, well, if that was the case, wouldn't it make a little bit more sense to choose a Nordic country where Loki and Thor would have had iconography on the walls and all that kind of stuff, and he would have been like, or the kid would have pointed to a Loki.
They're saying a devil came. They're not saying.
I understand the point, but it's just like, to me, I'm like,
then it doesn't matter where they are.
Fair enough.
It's supposed to show the universal idea of
a devil, right?
I don't think trying to pin it to like a Nordic country would. I mean, because the idea is that kid doesn't know, oh, Loki came to get me. The kid is like, oh my goodness, a devil came and did this, which was a bunch of people.
Sure.
So it wouldn't matter where they are as long as there's imagery of a devil. The kid can point to the devil and be
that makes sense.
That's who came.
Sure.
And I think what you're leaning into is the fact that everyone was so hyped about Mephisto that it's confusing to see someone point to the devil.
Oh, that's 100% what I was leaning to. I'm like, if the director was like, no, don't get like your backs up about this. I'm like, oh, then maybe you should have considered the fact that everyone's gonna link that to Mephisto, because it literally looks like Mephisto.
Yeah, but they can't have it be obviously the big reveal, even though people watching it already. People like us watching it already know that it's just Loki variants, that they didn't want to reveal that at that time. They still want, and I think the whole point of coming out before the rest of the world saw it, saying it's not Mephisto, is that they already know, like, well, in that episode, we wanted a mystery to be revealed by the end, that they're not looking at some other evil. We're looking for a Loki. So it's to set that up of like that Loki is connected as evil to these people.
Fair enough.
I think it's good writing, but yes, living in a world where everyone's going to be like, it's Mephisto, you got to have to cut the legs out from under those people. And so it isn't. This is the imagery we were trying to get at, which means when you see the episode, you already know that they're talking about Loki. But I think that's the problem with, again, for me, the week to week is that you would have no, like just, hey, it's not Mephisto. Please let us do this week to week and uncover when we want to uncover without you being like, how come it wasn't Mephisto? Because again, if it was all out at once, you wouldn't have that issue.
I don't think it would
the
be
whole
the
thing
issue.
And be like, I got it. It was
Loki. I feel like what would happen is like, oh, you get some like jackass live tweeting the whole series or something like that, and you're like, oh, Mephisto confirmed, and you get like memes and retweets of that before it was real. But then people would immediately be like, within the first day, they'd be like, fake news, immediately. So you're right. The week to week format is lending itself to that. But I'm glad that the director's like, right now, they're like, no, just don't do this to yourselves. Don't do this to me. Don't criticize this. Don't make this something that's worse.
Yeah, like please let this art just be what it is and stop putting extra stuff on it.
It must suck for them to have to do that,
That's what I said about WandaVision. If I am convinced that no matter what the company line is, they would have wanted to just put everything out at once for that show in particular. It's the first one. Everyone was speculating, and I feel like obviously as people revisit it, they'll see what was good about it, but it just got destroyed by all of people's expectations, and having the cast be like, "Ooh, wonder if when you're going to see this person, you're going to freak out."
We're calling Paul Bettany out on that, but he was clever. He's like, "Ooh, the famous actor I've never worked." I'm like, "Yeah, that's a funny kid. That's funny." He had a good.
It worked. I would say that works if you are promoting a movie and everyone gets to see it all at once. I don't think it works for week-to-week television, especially in the MCU.
Well, I'm glad they're figuring this out because I mean, it does make sense in the sense where I'm like, okay, well, these actors are used to doing like movie promo stuff, and that was exactly what Paul Bettany was doing. And like they explicitly said like this is movie level shooting, filming style stuff. So it's like they have it in your mind that you're watching a movie. It's just like cut up into 6 different parts.
So the big thing about France as well, I don't know if this will be important later, but they make a point of saying this is the 6th attack in 1 week, within a week. So within a week, maybe that will be important later. I just wanted to point that out. I don't have anything to comment on other than we'll see.
The only comment I have, like, because I will watch the episode twice, because I'm just like, this is something I'm gonna have to watch multiple times because the time travel stuff is gonna bug the crap out of me, and I always need to process that slowly. It's weird when they said like, oh, this happened within the span of a week, because it's like TVA agents saying it, right? Because I'm like, are you saying that within the context of a week in France, or are you saying that within a week in the TVA? Like, that's what was confusing to me in the dialogue, because like a week in the TVA could be like a century, for example, and they could just like, well, whatever. But like, I would just take it as I'm taking that with a grain of salt for sure.
A week
within the TVA timeline.
No, a week just for
us.
How humans experience a week.
Fair enough. Okay,
that would be the easiest way to unpack that. Basically, okay, so then they go back to Loki's trial, and he makes a good point. He's like, well, then why wouldn't you have the Avengers on trial? They're the ones that actually did the time travel. They're the ones that are time criminals, and I wouldn't have even got the Tesseract if they hadn't gone back in time. And then he says he knows they did because he smelt 2 different versions of Tony Stark's cologne.
Yeah, the Axe body spray or something like that. That was funny. That was really, really funny. I was like, you smelled 2 versions of Axe cologne.
Yeah, so he's like, they obviously did something fucked up. And again, I think this is leading towards me being like, they're obviously not neutral on this, because they say, no, they did what was supposed to happen. You didn't do what was supposed to happen. And then we find, and I think this is the first time Loki is going to like bump up against the mental and emotional stuff. He's already been stripped of the physical stuff, and it's just like, what do you mean according to who? And it's this thing of like, well, I do what I want to do, like you can't. And it's again the TVA unbothered being like, no, you don't, you do what the timekeepers want to have happen.
I love that.
Correct you if you try to do anything else.
It's like, I do what I want, and he's like, sure you do.
Every single Mobius time condescending yet, but like every I mean the TVA in general is like, sure you do, like repeatedly. I'm like, it's great, it's so much fun. What I'm trying to say is, it seems like Owen Wilson is the condescending one. It seems like everyone else just doesn't, like, he is not even worth condescending to, because they're just like, no, you don't. Like, because he's like, well, who decides? And then she's like, the timekeepers. And he's like, so then what do you do? She's like, I decide based on what they decide. Like, shut up. Like, what do you why are you gumming up the works here? We're gonna kill you now, go away.
Why are you questioning this system that you didn't even know about until just now? Like, what the hell? I do like that, because in that scene, like the last thing that he has is stripped away, which is his magic. Like, it started with like everything you were talking about, the clothes, and now his magic's completely gone here too in the TVA, and he's like, he's really stripped away. I still think he has the idea. I think he still has the concept of like, this is temporary, that I can't use my magic and I can still get the Tesseract back. So it is another thing stripped away, but I feel like he thinks that's a temporary thing, only because
of what happens later, I feel like that's when he fully feels like everything actually has been taken away from me. But I do
Yeah.
think, yes, I think he's like, oh, that's annoying. I'll get it
Yep.
back though, and he does try to plan and
Yeah.
get the Tesseract back. So I think
Yeah.
he's still kind of like, this is just a. I think he says it in the scene. He might not, but he's just like, oh, this is just a blip. Like you're just something I have to get around. Like I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And what I also like is that, again, this is the Loki from the first Avengers movie.
2012 Loki.
Yeah, so he still thinks like, oh, they probably came back in time to stop me from becoming king. Like
I was going to point that out too. Yeah.
He is still under the impression that like he is important, and this episode at the very least is like
You are, but in a different way.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But like, but it's like, you're not like the big threat that the Avengers had to like do time crimes to fix. So no.
Yeah. Because I love how he immediately like blows up his own ego. It's like how how desperate the Avengers must have been to resort to time travel to prevent me from winning. Because he's like, even though he lost the Battle of New York, he's captured with Shield, and he got the Tesseract, he floated out. He still thinks that he's like a big bad and all that kind of stuff, even though he was disproved in everything like immediately. And even though he knows he got his power from Thanos, who he was planning to betray, it was like he still thinks he's like smarter than literally everyone else, because it's like, okay, Thanos might be more powerful than me, but I'm gonna trick him. He literally thinks he's gonna trick everyone else, and this is the first instance where he's like, no, you literally can't do that. None of that is gonna happen here.
It will not work. Then this is where Mobius finally meets with Loki, and he takes Loki away, and he speaks to the judge, played by Gugu Mbatha. I don't remember her name, and she's just like, this is a stupid idea. And this is what I'm talking about. Like he's not antagonistic with the judge, but also he is kind of just like, oh, that's funny that you think like that you can tell me what to do. Like he does have that kind of air of like it's the Owen Wilson charm, but for this character it still works, of like, oh, I'm always looking up to you, like that's nice, that's how it should be. And it is like this idea of like that he thinks he's gaming the system, and who knows how effective he will be ultimately. But for this episode, I think they have set up that like he is at odds with the people he works with. He even says later like, oh, I'll help you burn down the Nightmare department, not his department, but like it's he doesn't really hold the TVA as sacred as everyone else. I'm sure he's using what they have available to him to do what he wants to do, which is track down, at this point we just think it's a more powerful variant, but we know it's a Loki variant. And he's going to use Loki to do that, kind of like a Silence of the Lambs type, like use the serial killer to get the serial killer. I mean, in this time it's like, and it's you, so you probably will have way more insight. But basically, Loki was about to get killed. Basically, the judgment was like, yeah, just kill this one. And
see, that's where this whole thing is so weirdly interesting to me. And this is why I'm like, the TVA is such a propaganda machine, and they must be evil, because I'm like, if and you're right, Owen Wilson even confirms, is like, where are you taking me? Are you going to kill me? He's like, no, that's where you just were. I took you out of that room. He says that, and I'm just like, wait, okay, if they were going to kill Loki, but they were going to make such a big deal of him not being in the timeline anymore, wouldn't the punishment just be like, no, we're putting you back in the timeline, and we're just going to keep doing that, and we put like a chip on you so you can't deviate from it again or something like that? I don't know,
but they've
like,
already
that was
blown up that
thing.
timeline, so they don't need to put him back anywhere.
So that's weird though. Because
why would that be weird?
Because
they already got rid of it.
So to me, the whole timeline is blown up. Like that whole thing is blown up. That can't be the case, because that's
they captured him and they said set the charge, and they blew it up. So him escaping never happened.
Wait, set the charge. So that charge that they put down, that blows up the entire timeline.
That's what I was saying at the beginning, and they disintegrate the whole thing. So like everything that started to happen because he left just didn't happen, and that ties up all the loose ends from Endgame. Because I didn't get that. I didn't get that. No, that's what they're doing. Every time they show up, right. It's called pruning. They call it pruning, but every time they show up, they're just cutting that off. So
literally pruning a branch off the timeline.
Don't think about it as they just blew up the Gobi Desert. It's everything that happened since he took that Tesseract is
I
blown up.
legit thought, okay, so I legit thought that it was like an MIB type thing where it's like, okay, this device is going to make everyone forget that we were ever here.
No, they are
I literally
killing
thought that
everybody
was,
and everything about that timeline.
that's crazy.
And they're
So
taking
I
the
thought,
criminal so that the criminal is aware we are killing you because you did this.
interesting. So I was under the impression that it was the reset device,
No.
like the same
The
MIB,
reset
like,
is
oh,
resetting
everyone's
the sacred timeline. They wouldn't reset a extra
crazy.
timeline.
Okay, so this Loki is already independent than everything else then. Even if they were, because I thought the TVA was just like, what are you doing? We're gonna put you back.
No.
We're just gonna put you back. That's
No.
it. I literally thought, and we're gonna wipe your memory while doing it. That's
No.
what I thought they were doing. Wow. Okay, that got way more intense, and that final scene got way more intense then. God damn, I can't wait to talk to that scene. All right. I missed that. Huge.
So basically, this is the interrogation scene I feel like you wanted to get to, where Loki basically is asked, like, initially, like, all right, well, if you could go back, what are you going to do? And he's like, oh, I'd be king. And he's like, yeah, what? He says Earth first, which I found very interesting, but I guess that's where 2012 Loki's head was at. Like, I want to be
Midgard.
god of Earth,
yeah.
then Asgard, then the 9 realms. And he's like, okay, space, great. Like, but well, like, why would you want to rule? And then he basically said, again, this is where he's saying all the things that TVA is doing, which is, well, I just want to take that option of choice away from people and make things easier for them, because every time you have a choice, you're going to choose something that causes shame or like destruction. So I'll just take all that away and you just do what I want you to do. And which is what the TVA is doing, is what, if you do something we don't want you to do, you're done.
And
we'll get rid of that.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things about this scene that I wanted to point out, is that he's basically using this logic of like, hey, if I rule you all, you'll all be better for it. You have a job, you have a purpose, you'll know exactly what to do. You'll work against my will. You'll feel like you're working towards something, as opposed to trying to figure out life, trying to go to Europe and find yourself, all that kind of stuff. It's like he raises that point, and then when the TVA uses against him, is like, hey, the timekeepers are basically doing this to you. You're a puppet as well, kind of deal. He's like, no, I'm not. And he just has the exact same rebellion that literally anyone that he was trying to control was doing. And that mirroring was great. I loved it so much, because for him to realize he's a puppet now is amazing.
And I like that Mobius points out, like, for someone born to rule, you certainly lose a lot, which is very true.
I like the calling out in that scene a lot, because it's like, well, what are you the god of again? Mischief? Because none of this seems very mischievous. And I was just like,
that's a different
I'm glad
point,
he said
I think.
it.
I think there's a different one. I think
it's a very different.
So there's the first point is, it's like, it's your nature to lose, which is setting up the fact that he does die, eventually, and like die, not achieving what he wanted to. But the next point, yes, is if you think you're the god of mischief, all you're doing is murdering. You're not helping anybody. Like, you're not a mischievous scamp. Like,
it's not like you're doing Jackass for the space world. Like, that would be hilarious if it was like, oh, Loki was actually just doing Jackass for like all of the universe to watch on television or something like that. Then that's mischievous. But like, there's never been anything mischievous about Loki.
No, I don't agree with that. As I said, I feel like Avengers is the only time where I'm like, oh, like, this guy's just the bad guy. Like, of the movies he shows up in, he is more of a nuisance than he is out and out evil, other than 2012, which is why it's a good idea that they chose 2012's Loki in particular, because
Thor Ragnarok
you are
proves
like, it is stuff that comes up in this conversation about like how he was taken away from his actual family, so and then he learns about it, and he's like, oh, that explains a lot about my life and how I've always felt kind of like on the outside. But so then I think, well, people haven't heard our Thor episode at this point, but we've revisited the Thor movies, and like, it is kind of like, that first movie, you're like, I mean, he's not wrong to be upset about any of this stuff. He is kind of calling it, but that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just the 2012 Loki that I'm like, oh, you're just a straight up villain. And it feels like it just feels off because of how he is portrayed in every other thing. Because it is the mischievous person who is like, he's doing petty things, but like overall, he's not like as we said, when he ruled Asgard, it was just like, yeah, just praise me, and that's like everyone would pretty much just be doing what they would have been doing anyway.
Yeah, he's just hedonistic. That's it.
Yeah.
Like the Thor Ragnarok proved that. It's like even if he were to rule, he wouldn't do anything. Like he would be like, yeah, you guys have glorious purpose, and that's to entertain me. I'm like, okay, fine if you think that's what you want to do, but I guess that seems mischievous from a god's perspective.
I mean, it's mischievous because he's
Maybe.
there not himself. He's pretending to be somebody else, and it's like, ooh, like yeah, they're praising me, but they don't know I'm still here. Anyway, I think at first I was like, oh, the DB Cooper thing is a bit deflating, but I think now, having gone through this, I understand why they play it when they play it. It's to show like you used to be mischievous, like this DB Cooper thing. It's just, it felt, while I was watching it, it really felt like, oh, they just did this for the trailer. Like it feels like it doesn't really have bearing. And I know part of that is me being like, well, it's not the show I wanted then, because I thought it was going to be like, oh, this is Loki through time doing things that like we always attributed to other people.
Well, I mean, I think we still could very much get that.
Yeah, but this is like, there is no like real beginning, middle, end of that. It doesn't feel like a thought out thing. It's just like, DB Cooper, that was Loki. And like, so, and even the fact that they have lines like, brother Handel, I hope you're ready for me. It's kind of like, that's set, you put that in the trailer, that sets people's expectations for certain things. And then you're like, oh, he was just saying that because it was like, all right, I pulled it off, now pull me back. Like it's not like invoking anything else other than like, oh, that's how he got away with it.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, I wouldn't have put that in the trailer, basically, is what I'm saying.
Right.
It just felt like, oh, we're gonna go somewhere with that, but it didn't go anywhere. But now I'm thinking like, maybe it was just supposed to be like, this is mischief. Going to Germany and taking people's eyes out and telling them to kneel before you isn't mischievous.
Yeah, that's a good point. I also like that, just them inserting that to be like, okay, yeah, let's break up this rewind the greatest hits kind of thing and give us something slightly new in the middle of it that's fun. And like, yeah, it was just fun. And the DB Cooper thing was perfect for me there, because unless like, I know like a lot of people love that story, and it's a great story. It really, really is. It's fascinating. It's today the only air heist that has never been solved. And so that's really, really cool. I don't know if I put that much stock into caring about how Loki was like. I was just, when I saw that in the trailer, I didn't even know what was happening, because I was like, oh, what was that? And you confirmed, it's like, oh, that's DB Cooper. I'm like, oh, cool. But I didn't think that was actually going to do anything like big, really.
Well, this is what I'm saying. It's just for the trailer. I that is underwhelming to me. Like, if you put that in a trailer, you would think that that's like a story point that's going to be explored. I'm not saying, oh, I wish they showed me the heist. I'm saying I wish that played into more character development than just, remember when you were DB Cooper? It's like a Family Guy cutaway gag. Like, this reminds me of the time where I was DB Cooper.
Well, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. It does seem like that cutaway thing. It was a lot of fun and all that kind of stuff. And you're right, the writers probably put a lot of effort into being like, now how can we make Loki into DB Cooper as historically accurate as possible? Because they went through so much to actually do the historical accuracies of that. I don't know if they showed like Loki holding like how many parachutes that he was holding, because DB Cooper had like requested 4. The money being flown off, yeah, that is whatever it is. But even like, they made sure that they had the airline captain's name properly addressed in like the overhead kind of thing. Like, there was so much that they went through to like, yeah, let's get the historical accuracies of these part down right for an event that was largely unknown how it was pulled off. But yeah, you're right, it's like they put a lot of effort into that, and it just kind of went nowhere. But at the same time, I didn't really care if that didn't go anywhere. It was just fun for me.
Again, I just wouldn't have put it in the trailer, because I think they know this is all me talking about how they market their stuff and build expectation, because I don't think anyone was like, ooh, like, well, how does DB? It's more the fact that they had a line in the trailer before they cut to black of Heimdall, Thor, I hope you're ready for me, meaning people would be like, oh, like maybe he's doing stuff to get back at Thor. So like, it's a misleading thing they put in the trailer, which independent of the historical accuracy,
Right.
it sets up something you think is going to be addressed, and you're like, oh no, that was just a goof one day he did.
Yep. I will say that I feel like I have seen a lot of mediocre to negative reaction to that, because a lot of people love that DB Cooper story, and they felt I did feel like a couple people felt cheated out of that. I don't know why.
Again, yeah, I'm with
Because
them.
I'm like,
it's not because
yeah.
I'm some DB Cooper fan. Like, I didn't even know who he was until that
Yep.
trailer brought it to my attention. It was more
Same.
the other world building aspects of that line of Heimdall, Thor, or brother, I hope you're ready for me, because it does.
I agree.
It is all set up like, and this is his big comeback after like being out of the game, like, right, like it feels like you're thinking like, oh, this is how he's gonna like make his way back or something like that,
Or
and
to
then
celebrate, or like,
yeah, like
just show to them
it
it's
just
like, yeah,
feels
I
like,
am gonna be a nuisance to you guys, and you guys are gonna have to chase me until the end of time.
right,
like
when literally it's just him being like, oh, I hope you catch me when I jump out the plane.
Yeah.
And that's that. Anyway, I feel like we've given it way too much time. Basically, this is more stripping away, because Loki tries to get up to prove a point, and he gets rewound, and he's just like, I was just trying to prove a point, and like he's like, oh, okay, then stand up then. And it's like reminding him that like he really doesn't have a say in what happens. It's like, now he's gonna stand up because he got permission, as opposed to trying to make his point. And if he sits down, then like he's just stuck, because he's like,
then he's
like,
just
what
being
is my free
obedient
will?
too.
Yeah, like,
yeah,
what is my free will here? And I like that bit, and I think that's where we get into the Owen Wilson being condescending, is that like the way he's talking to him, like, oh, okay, then stand up then, or like, oh, makes you sound smart, all of that stuff.
I really like the one. I really like how he's like, now he's like, I don't like to talk. It's like, now we know that's not true. And later he's talky. The one thing about Owen Wilson in that scene that's really, really good, it's just like how he's just constantly kind of outwitting Loki, when Loki's so used to being the wittiest person that can outwit everyone else. I really like that. It's just such a fun dynamic.
I look at it more like he doesn't need to outsmart him, because there's nothing Loki could actually do. Like he has the control. Like he is all, like, basically that's the next thing I wrote down, is that Loki was projecting on the TVA, because he basically says, I didn't realize this till the second time, he says exactly what he says doing at the end of the episode, which is like, yeah, you're just playing tricks to make it seem like you're, I'm not quoting him, but basically you're playing tricks to make yourself seem all powerful. And then Wilson's like, but we do have all the power. But like he's, and I think that's part of like, he needs that to be true as well. Like, come on, please tell me it's the same thing as me, of like, you're just like playing mean because you're so weak. And Wilson's like, but we're not. Like, it won't matter what you do. Like he could have the minor inconvenience of stealing that thing, but like it will never matter. Like wherever he goes, they'll find him, and they will ultimately get what they want out of this. So they can, and that's why I never feel like he's outwitting him. It's more like, okay, play it out. Like, see how this goes for yourself. Like,
you
say whatever you need to say, because we legitimately have all the power.
Yeah, because at this point in time, like Loki still is worshiping all the power of the Infinity Stones and the Tesseract and everything like that. And like that's why I think Loki thinks that he can still get out of there and has that hope, is because even in that first scene when he's like taken in and he's holding the Tesseract, the guy takes it away. He's like, and then Loki's like, be careful with that, all this kind of stuff. I was like, what is that? It's like, it's a Tesseract. Like, sounds dumb. It's just like, oh, you like, Loki must be thinking, you guys don't even know the power of the Tesseract and the Infinity Stones. That's why you guys are going to lose. But then they like, everyone on TV is like, bro, we use these as paperweights. Like, hilarious. I love that.
We aren't quite there yet, but yeah, I like Loki. So basically, he starts to see the greatest hits of Loki. He loses the Avengers, and then basically he sees new information, which is Thor: The Dark World, of he's the one. He learns that he gave the information that got his mom killed, which I find is very great, watching him like piece that together, which is again proving the point of like, you're not as mischievous as you think. You're actually pretty like
careless and reckless too.
Like you're, I wanted to say destructive, but like it's like, like you're all of your like plans for yourself will never really come together. Like, look at this.
Yeah. Because they're very short-sighted plans. They're just like, I'll do this and this will happen. It's like, no, people are always like 3 steps ahead of you or something like that. It's
And he basically this. So this is where he says what I think is important for Loki to know is like, oh, you're like a stepping stone, so people can become their best selves. Like you're not destined to become your best self. You're just there so that other people can be better.
Yeah, you're not Thanos. You're the guy that's literally helping everyone be the best versions of themselves. And for him to realize that and see the Avengers assemble and all this kind of stuff, and then see all the mistakes he makes after the fact, it's just like, dude.
And I think that I don't remember the line he says, but I only wrote down that that's Loki acknowledging, like, I think these people actually do have all the power. Like he says something where it's quite clear that.
Yeah, that's toward the end when
no, it is like, that scene, because then he gets angry at him for being like, I'll kill you, and then he's like, oh, like you killed your mom, and they do the rewinding stuff, and it's all like him being like, oh, like I really can't do anything. And so then that leads him to be like, okay, I'm not gonna be able to, I need to get back to the Tesseract, because then he steals
that's his last hope to get out of there for sure.
B-15 comes in and brings him out. And I think he watches the Ragnarok stuff, which was a great scene, because it's basically being like, oh, my family does grow to like accept me, like seeing that Odin actually calls him his son, and hearing what like Thor says about I thought the world of you, and like I think he sees like just like
he sees a bit of redemption in himself. He sees that after that, and like acceptance, whatever.
Yeah, it's just acceptance for sure is what he's seeing, which again from the first movie we feel like that's really what he wants, is to be accepted. And he gets that, but then also sees that, I think that's where he sees that Thanos kills him, and it says end of file. So it is just confirmation, like, oh yeah, like I was never going to be what I wanted to be.
Yeah, it humbles him so fast in such an effective way, and
he wasn't going to be that, but he did get what he didn't get what he wanted, he got what he needed.
Yes. And I felt like a lot of the people in that scene were like, oh great, so we were promised 2012 Loki to run around history, and now we get because of one scene we get this like the caring Loki at the end of like Endgame. And I'm like, no, that's not the case. We don't know that. But also at the same time, it's like, well, if these people are like showing you every aspect of your life and then taking away all your power and then showing the future of your life and then how you die, and you're forced to deal with that. Yeah, there's a big humbling experience when you're just like, no, you literally never win ever. Like we you just
we skipped over what you were talking about though, which is he makes his escape. He meets up with Casey, the Eugene Cordero character.
Yeah,
and that's when he learns that they just have Infinity Stones as paperweights, which is just another blow to him. And I didn't love it. I guess the second time I could see the humor in it, but because I didn't know how much pain was being inflicted when he was doing the loop on B-15, because I'm like, the optics of it was a white man torturing a black woman.
Right.
And I was just like, I don't like, this is going on for too long for me. I'm not that into this. But I guess when you hear the audio, it doesn't sound like she's in pain. She's more just annoyed.
It sounds like that.
And ultimately it's just him being like, I could do this all day. It wouldn't matter. I'm not making any progress by doing this. So then he just throws it away.
Yeah, because I think
that's when he watches the Ragnarok stuff. After he's like, oh, this doesn't even matter. I don't have the Tesseract won't help me. And even with this thing that they were using on me, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think at that point he says something like, is this truly the greatest power, or something like that? I think that's the line of dialogue. Like it's a question he asks himself. I know that for a fact, but I don't know if that's verbatim every word that he uses, but that's along the lines of what it is. But he's like, was I worshiping the wrong power all along? Were we all? So
basically he does the loop thing. Mobius comes back. Sorry, before that he does ask, is this the greatest power? But then after he does the loopy stuff and is like, this is pointless, puts it away, Mobius comes back, and I think he just sits down and he's like, you are formidable. Like, it's not saying you're the best, but it is for Loki at least being like, yeah, I can't beat you. Like this,
Yeah,
this is
that's basically admission of like submission at that point.
I just wrote, he concedes the TVA is formidable. It's kind of just like, yeah, all right, you got me. Because Mobius like, oh, did you try the test track? He's like, oh yeah, a bunch. Like I was trying everything. This is not going well for me.
And the fact that he's like playing with it, and he's like, I'm not even going to try to make it a point to try to confiscate it from you right now because you just have a trinket. Like that's all.
It
like,
won't mean anything. Yeah,
it was like that was literally your personal effects that we just put in a drawer. That was it. That's got insignificant. That's not significant to us whatsoever. That's you know what I think the great thing about that is like, is how fast that does humble him and how fast, how effective it is. And everyone understands, like, if you worship in power and you realize people were just using it as desk weights, you're like, it's going to be a humbling experience. But also,
again, I don't think it's a fast thing. I think it started from the beginning of him entering there. And again, time there probably doesn't matter, as they said, but it was the death by 1,000 cuts of like, all right, they took away the visuals of me being powerful. They got in my head about being powerful. And then they even backed it up even more. It wasn't just mind tricks because I can't use anything that I would have used. And then you add to that, he sees how his life played out. So he sees that he did kill his mom. He sees that he eventually gets his dad's love, but it's like, right before he dies, he sees that his brother was like, I mean, I wanted this to work, and and then he sees that they were united at the end. But it's like, I don't think it's a quick turnaround. I think that's a lot, and you would take some time to be like, all right, I think you got me.
No, what I meant is I didn't personally feel that. A lot of people are saying that he's like, oh, he's basically like now version within one episode. I'm like, it's a very convincing episode, guys. Like, I would be like, there's nothing I can do about anything. Everything sucks now. This is stupid. Like, I'm just saying, like, this is very nice effectively stripped away. Yeah, it
doesn't mean he's nice now. I think he's just like, I've been exposed.
He's lost.
I've been as exposed as and who knows what that turns him into.
Yeah. Like, I think he's just lost. He's just like, what do I worship now? What do I do? Because he's clearly a guy that wants to be adjacent to power.
Well, no, like he just wants the power. He doesn't want.
He wants power or adjacent to power or whatever. But he likes power. He wants it. He wants it for himself. He wants it. So he's whether or not he's going to be a TVA agent or whatever it is now. Like, that's what he's grappling with. What's his next steps now?
Yeah, because I would say it's not that he wants to be adjacent to power. He wants power because that's how he can control how people feel about him. That is quite clear.
Yeah,
being adjacent to power doesn't get him that. That's just,
true.
He's someone's bad guy. The whole point is like, he ultimately wants the acceptance, but his whole life has been set up that it's like, well, people aren't just going to accept him. So then he's like, well, then I need the control so that I can force people to accept me.
Exactly. Just like in Ragnarok, it's like, yep, I've got the control now. You guys think I'm Odin, but I'm going to make you make a statue to me, and we're going to make plays about me. And all this kind of stuff. Like, that's exactly what he wants. And I get that. Yeah.
But so, I see what you're saying. You were highlighting that other people think it's
other
too
people
quick
thought
of
it was
a
fast.
turnaround.
And I'm just like, no, it is not. I'm like, this is great work. It's great writing. It's just like, even the fact that he gets away from them and then gets to go back to the room himself and play with the machine himself and know that it's not Owen Wilson playing with the machine manipulating things. It's like, no, I'm literally playing this out myself, and he's not lying. Like, I always lose, and I watch myself die, and that's literally end credits. Like, literally no more resurrections after that.
And the file.
So, that's a humbling experience. So
I
I'm
just
like,
want to get this last scene in quickly. So they're in 1858 Oklahoma. I guess that's the oil rush. I don't know. I should have looked it up, but it is.
I looked it up, and that was the oil rush. That was, I think, a year before or a year afterwards, the oil rush that was in Oklahoma. That's the only significance I found about that year.
So it makes sense that, like, they said, oh, it's just oil everywhere, and that's why. And I'm just going to assume this is Lady Loki.
That's what I'm assuming, because the file previously in that scene where he's in France, it says gender fluid. So, and we know there's a Lady Loki. So, like, I'm glad we got here. Is in my mind, I'm like, okay, is this a passing of the torch of the character Loki? Because it very well could be. I mean, we could very well see Tom Hiddleston's Loki die at the end of this, and then whoever female Loki is take over that point on, because like
I think what will happen, and I can't even say this is my own thought. I feel like I saw it on one of the things I watched, is that it's probably going to be that he works with Lady Loki because they're like, oh yeah, we can't have the TVA do what they're doing. Like it seems like because it seems like whoever, I know we're just assuming it's Lady Loki, but like, and it's, I hate saying lady, it's the woman version, but like, and I think that's what she's called in the comics. So my hands are tied. But I think Lady Loki is probably like, oh yeah, like there should be free will. And maybe it's a selfish reason for it, but it's like, she isn't killing the citizens of wherever she is. Like she gave candy to that kid. It's, I'm calling these agents out and then I kill them.
She's killing cops.
I'm bringing them in and then I'm going to kill them. Yeah.
She's basically being like, hey, your system's corrupt. It's full of propaganda. We should have free will. I'm going to kill the cops.
Yeah.
I think
it's
basically that.
Yeah. And I think that will ultimately be you. I mean, you're right. He still might die. I just think that the idea is you would still feel it, and I think this comes down to what we've talked about many times, is that I don't ever really look at Loki as like a villain. He's just an interesting character in these movies. So I don't know if people are looking for Lady Loki to now become a villain out of this, or if I don't even know if she'll live outside of this TV show.
Right. I'm sure she will. I can't see Marvel like, well, that's not true. Quicksilver.
And she'll definitely have more time than Quicksilver. I shouldn't even say that.
Yep.
I would assume she'll have more time than Quicksilver.
Yeah. My assumption is that she'll go on beyond this, and my assumption is that she is straight up evil. And the reason being is like, one, when they talked about, so linking together the propaganda video together with what Owen Wilson says and all that kind of stuff, assuming that there's some validity and truth in that propaganda video, but let's say, okay, there are different variants of Loki, and that female Loki is a variant.
Well, and we know for a fact
we know for a fact they are, yeah. But what I'm basically saying is, what if each variant had varying degrees of evil, and just Lady Loki's the most evil one? Because like Owen Wilson says,
putting her in the same room with Loki needs to change, or else she's not that effective of a like. Maybe it doesn't need to change her. Maybe she could just be like the Joker in The Dark Knight. Maybe. I just think like, because it's a TV show, my assumption is her views will at least be challenged.
Right.
And she may come off as less evil, especially if
it's
she's
very
going
possible
up against the TVA. My assumption
it's very
is
possible.
How she is framed will change once we meet her. So maybe she never changes. It's just right now she's being set up as the villain, but you realize, well, even if it's for selfish reasons, she's trying to make the world better. Like, I know it's for her so she can operate the way she wants to, but it's more like the eradication of the TVA might be better. Yeah.
It's defund the TVA. It really, really is. And the reason why I say that is that like my assumption is that Lady Loki is the most evil version is just because when Owen Wilson's like, oh, I track down dangerous variants, he's like, oh, and I'm one of them. He's like, no, you're a little pussycat. And to me, I'm like, okay, that accurately does sum up Loki in the sense where it's like, yeah, you do evil things like cats do, but at the end of the day, you're not actually evil. You're just kind of a selfish dick. And that's exactly what more Loki is.
I think that was more to add to the point of like, you just keep losing. So the degree to which you're evil doesn't really matter, because it's not like you can succeed the way Lady Loki has succeeded.
Right. And that's what I mean. Like, cats are evil to a degree where it's like, yeah, your evil doesn't really matter, because it's like, oh, like a cat like just randomly bit me or scratched me, like, haha, you're just a cat, that doesn't really do much. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing where it's
look, I get it. Like, he is less effective, and also we know what Loki can become. So I think that plays into, but again, as I said, we are with the most evil Loki, as in historically in the cinematic universe.
As from what we've known,
Loki was the most evil he ever was.
From what we've known,
right. And now we've got a Lady Loki. Again, we just keep assuming it's Lady Loki. That
I think
is
it's a
way
fair
more
assumption,
effective.
though.
Yeah, who's
I think
way
it is
more
a fair
effective.
assumption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's too late now, but we haven't seen the first 2 episodes. We only seen the first one. Like, I don't want people to think like, oh, we're ruining it by saying this. Like, it's spoiled wrong, but also like we aren't cool enough to get the first 2 episodes. We're watching
but
it.
yeah, not yet. But yeah, this that's exactly what happened. So I firmly believe it's Lady Loki. I firmly do. There's nothing about that doesn't scream Lady Loki to me. But I am projecting.
Yeah.
Because it's based on a lot of what other people have said. Like I remember like the new Rockstars discussion forum theory thing about it, which is a lot of fun because I'm like, yeah, let's wildly, like I like a show dedicated to wild speculation. So I'm like, yeah, that's a lot of fun. I like when like one of the Twitch streamers, she's like, yeah, she gives me a female energy. I'm like watching the scene. I'm like, I can see what she means by that. But at the end of the day, like now that,
sure.
yeah, now
or
that
maybe
we know,
won't. I don't know. I don't know
right.
why I'm trying to predict what Marvel's going to do. My assumption is we'll see. We'll have
that's
a
what
reveal
we're trying always.
figures.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, but that's what I've always been trying to do is predict what Marvel's trying to do unsuccessfully, except for a few random ones where I'm like, oh, I was right there. But yeah, I think this is female Loki. I think this is gonna be a lot of fun. My biggest question is this: if we keep the Tom Hiddleston Loki, I think it'll be Tom Hiddleston's Loki will be stuck in doing TVA stuff, knowing that the Endgame thing is the last reel and he won't go on beyond that, right?
Well, yeah, he already said I can't go back. There isn't an option for him to go back. He just has to live outside of it. Yeah.
So the only way for the character of Loki to continue after this and in the actual real world is a female Loki. So to me, I'm like, yeah, therefore we could have a world where 2 Lokis simultaneously exist, and one Loki's existence is not really, well, I mean, could have a major impact because like what Kevin Feige has said, like, yeah, this is going to have the greatest impact on the MCU out of all the other series. I'm like, great, because the other series barely had an impact on the MCU.
I 100% disagree. Like,
right.
It gave us full-on Scarlet Witch. It brought Vision back to life. It gave us a new Captain America. Like, I don't know.
You're very right about that.
All of that stuff.
Sorry.
I get that it's stuff you like, but I feel like it's such a. I just don't like the culture of like it didn't bring anything into.
No, I misspoke there. I misspoke there for sure. I misspoke.
These shows are doing a lot of good work in terms of solidifying characters we already knew and making us like characters maybe some people didn't like before, and bringing in new characters. Like it is bringing new characters or upgrading characters we already seen, so it's still having an effect on the MCU.
Yeah, it's just
I
not
understand
having
what he's saying that this is going to be like the new big bad kind of teased in this, but it's like they need to settle down with their pull quotes. They really need to just let these shows operate because people are missing so many good things out of these shows when they get attached to like, finally this is gonna bring in like the mutants.
Fantastic Four.
Like fantastic. Yeah, like all right.
Reed Richards is gonna be the aerospace tech. I'm like, okay, you're right. You're absolutely, and I completely misspoke there. I completely did. It is early, and I only had 1 cup of coffee. But yeah, these shows are doing a lot of good and transforming this. I'm pretty sure that at the end of this series, we're gonna have a female Loki that continues on with the main sacred timeline, if that's what we're gonna call it. If not, like one thing I'm absolutely sure of is like all this is gonna do is just the series is gonna continue to fracture the timeline. The TVA might not exist at the end of this, and then the multiverse of madness, like the Spider-Man movie, all of a sudden makes way more sense. The multiverse of madness movie is going to be crazy, like it, like just all this kind of stuff, and like how is putting back together the timeline, or even if they are interested in putting back together the timeline from a storytelling standpoint or not. Like, but like, I mean, this is a great way of being like Kang the Conqueror.
So as I would say, I'm not here to tell anyone how to enjoy this content. I would say on this podcast, as I am a co-host, my focus will be on how well they service the characters that are on screen.
Yeah.
And my KPIs won't be tied to what gets introduced or how it sets up other movies. It will be strictly to how well I feel like the characters that we see on screen are serviced.
Yeah, and and you're the one that puts me in check when I deviate out of that, because I do all the time.
I don't want people to feel like, oh, it's the wrong way to, or this is the right way. I'm just saying if that's what you're looking, that energy from me, no, I'm not gonna give these shows that energy.
And you know that is very, very fair, because I'm at the end of the day only interested in dealing with the reality and not interested in dealing with projections or what other people project out there. I am more interested in being like, what's this? What's my take? What's your take? Let's look at this from a critical race theory, because apparently no other content creator is willing to do that with Captain America and the Winter Soldier. So I'm just like, yeah, let's do that for sure. So I got to do better with keeping my mind on eyes on the prize here and not being like, oh, they didn't do Reed Richards like I wanted them to, or like someone else said that they were going to, and then they built up in my mind, because that's all that happens. Every other content creator is like, oh, they were supposed to do this, they're supposed to do this, and then it gets in my mind, and I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, shit, that never actually happened. Damn it.
Yeah.
I feel like a goof. But yeah,
we'll see how it goes. I think, obviously we'll be rating it at the end of the season, so there's no rating here.
Episode rating.
Sure. I just tell people I think we both liked it, and we're interested to see where it goes. And that's the question: is what do you think we have for the next episode? What do you think we're going to be exploring here? I don't know. I was going to wrap it up, but now we've said this. What are you thinking? I'm just really hoping, I'm just not in terms of storyline. I'm just hoping that we get like one weird historical event that gets explained through Loki every single episode, like that DB Cooper thing. I want him to be the reason why people think there's Sasquatch or something like that. Is like, he and Thor kept playing jokes and like losing bets or something like that. That was so fun. Like, that's really what I want to see, because everything else, if I want anything else on that, because I feel like I would be projecting to be like, oh yeah, I want Mephisto to be confirmed. No, I want them to just have fun with those historical events and just like rewrite those. I know we're going to go to Pompeii at some point. I know we're going to see President Loki's timeline play out some point. It's just going to be a wildly interesting show. And I think like the next episode, I just want more of those historical things explained. Excellent. Well, there's only one way to do that, and that is by heading to thatshelf.com so you can listen to our next episode, but also other great podcasts like Bad Game Movies, Black Hole Films, Changing Reels Compulsions. There's a whole bunch of great podcasts out there, so please head on over there. And if you want to hear older episodes from us, then go to tdferything.com/spoiledrotten. Our Twitter is @tdfspoiled. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, whole bunch of places. So please go there, rate, review, subscribe. If we're not there, you know our Twitter, you know our email. Get in touch with us and let us know where we should be. Share with your friends. I probably said that already. And enjoy the rest of your week. Yep. And share with your family. Yes. You didn't say that. You didn't say family. That's true. Yep. Share with everyone you know, even if you don't consider them a friend or a family. Yep. All right. Bye-bye. Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.